This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. The topic what you're going to start today is apex trigger. Apex is of two types. One is apex class and apex trigger. So what is the purpose of apex? To write the business logic, right? So this is a business layer of your MEC architecture. So where you will write your own custom logic. Okay, so where we can write the business logic using apex language. So apex in the sense, what are the elements the apex consists of? Apex consists of your a data declaration, right? Data declaration methods. It means altogether it's a class, right? Your class is Apex. So Apex class can contains data declaration methods, system defined methods, right? System defined methods, and we use exception handlings, SOQL, SOSL, DML, etc. So all this consist of elements of your Apex language, right? Your Apex language can have all these elements. So where I can use all these elements, one place we have we already covered Apex class, right? It means a controller in your Visual Force page, okay? And we can also write the class as an extension, and we can also write a utility class. It means a class will call another class, right? So common set of code you can move to one class. So we have seen so far the class can contain all these elements, which is nothing but your Apex. There is another framework where you can use all these elements. So again, it's going to be a place where you are going to write the business logic. Your Apex class, where you write the business logic, and the Apex trigger is also a place where you can write the business logic. But there is a difference. There is a different, way you execute these Apex types, right? So this will be executed through a Visual Force page. A class can call another class, and this can also be uh, executed from process builder as well. Process builder also you can execute this. Okay, the topics will cover along with the visual flow. Okay, Apex class can also be executed from the process. Automatically, you can invoke a block of code. And what is Apex trigger? Apex trigger is a special framework. Okay, it's a special framework. How I'm going to define the Apex trigger? See, Apex trigger is a block of Apex code. Okay, your Apex class is also a block of Apex code only, right? So we have methods in the class, and we have logic written in the method inside the method. So when you call the method, the logic will be executed. Similarly, Apex trigger is like your class is a block of Apex code that would be executed when how will you execute this Apex trigger? We are not going to have a method inside the Apex trigger. Okay, we are not going to have a method so that you will call the method. That's not going to be happen in the apex trigger. Apex trigger is will execute automatically. It will executed or fired automatically whenever you perform any DML operation during a database operation. Okay, so this is a very short definition of your trigger. So apex trigger is a block of code that would be executed or fired. It means what? It will be invoked or fired during database operations. What are the operations we have? The database operations, we have insert, update, delete, undelete when you restore the data from recycle bin, undelete. So these are the database operations you can perform. Okay, so during the insert, during the update, during delete, during undelete, I can automatically perform some logic. That is that is your apex trigger. But what is the special feature of apex trigger? It is going to be executed not only after insert. Okay, so usually your workflow, validation rule, and your process builder, everything will execute after insert, after update. Am I right? When you when you insert a new record, okay, you can send an email using workflow. You can assign a task, right? When you update some record based on a field criteria or formula criteria, I can perform some actions. It can be assigning a task, email, field update, or outbound message, right? In your process builder, for a new record, for updating record, I can perform. I can invoke some actions. Okay, updating a record, creating a record, post to chatter, submit for approval, right? Custom notification, quick action. You can submit another process. So all those are actions you can perform in the uh, declaratively in the process builder, right? So what are the process automations we have? Workflows, process, it means process builder. We have flows, will be covered later. Approval process. Okay, so these are the automation process, right? So all these processes will execute, okay, except flows. Flows is a different no different framework. So these will execute after insert and update. So these are the events this process will fire. Okay, these are the events this process will fire. What about your apex trigger? Apex trigger will also be executed, a block of code will be executed during database operations. Okay, most important thing is it's going to be fired not only after database operations. What are the database operations after? Insert, update, okay, and including delete operation, including undelete operation. Okay, not only insert, update, you can execute the block of code after delete operation, after undelete operation, as well as after or before. What does it mean? Before I perform any DML operation, okay, not only after, before I perform any database operation, right, I can perform a block of code, I can execute a block of code. So before, after insert, before, after update, before, okay, after undelete, and after delete, and after undelete. So there is no before operation is type is supported for undelete. So okay, there are 7 DML events. So what are the supported DML events in your trigger? So all these are the DML events, based on which I can execute the block of code. When I say before, what does it mean? We know we can able to right. We have seen practically in our visual flow. I mean process workflow and all. What is after insert, right? Because after inserted, uh, we know like system that record will be there in the database. So based on the criteria, your workflow and process will fire. But what about before insert? Okay, the record is not there in the database, but how can we perform a block of code with the value what user trying to insert, with the value what user trying to update, okay, and which record user trying to delete. Okay, so these are the scenarios. How will you come to know the records which are not there in the database, so that before even the record goes to the database, right? How can I refer those values so that I can execute the block of code? So that's a framework we are going to see. Okay, so trigger is a block of code would be executed before or after the DML operation, nothing but database operation. Okay, so people are good with this. There are two types of trigger in general. Okay, like the way how the trigger is fired, in that way we categorize the trigger: before trigger, after trigger. Okay, there are two ways we categorize the trigger. So when you will go for before trigger, okay, to save time, let's go with the defined nodes. The before trigger will fire before any data is saved to the database, right? Before any data is saved to the database. It means what? Suppose, okay, I'm going to insert an account record. I'm going to insert an account record. Okay, so before, when I trying to insert an account, when I'm trying to insert an account, I would like to check the duplicate. I would like to check the duplicate. I can do that. Okay, the record before even goes to the database, I can get this name during runtime. I can get this value during runtime and check it in the existing records. Okay, among the existing records, I can compare whether any record is there in the database with the same name. Got me? And I can right, those validations I can do. So before trigger basically is fired before the new data is saved, and basically it is used to validate the input. It is used to validate the input before it is permanently stored into the committed to the database. Okay, I give another scenario. The another scenario, say for example, I'm trying to delete a contact. I'm trying to delete a contact. The contact belongs to some account, right? So when I try to delete, when a user trying to delete, then at the back end, I'm going to execute the trigger. At the back end, I'm going to execute the trigger. That what the trigger is going to do? The trigger will go and check whether the contact belongs to any account or not. Okay, the contact belongs to any account or not. If it belongs to any account, then I display an error message. The contact belongs to some account, so cannot be deleted. Okay, the contact with account cannot be deleted. Some error message. So before the changes is, you are doing some changes to the database. What changes? Deleting a record. So okay, deleting a record. So I'm going to perform some logic. The logic is nothing but checking whether the contact has any parent, which means account. Okay, if it contains any parent, then I'm going to block the user deleting this record. So that's the kind of validation, right? So before trigger you will go for to validate the input, where in the case of after trigger, right, when you go for after trigger, okay, is required to perform some logic on the related record. Okay, for example, I create a account record got inserted. Okay, when I insert new account record got inserted. Once the account record is inserted, I would like to create an opportunity record automatically. Okay, I would like to create an opportunity record automatically with some logic. I perform some logic, I do some calculation, then I create the opportunity record. Okay, because Apex trigger is going to be a class, right, where you're going to write the business logic. So we need to create a related record. I need a record ID. Whatever the record inserted, I need that ID. For that parent ID, I'm going to insert a child. For related to the record which is inserted, I'm going to perform some logic. So you need record ID. Okay, in that case, you'll go for a after trigger. So after trigger is fired after the record is saved. And why we go for after trigger? The reason, okay, we are going to perform some logic. It's used to perform related records based on record ID, right? Based on record ID, you like to perform the some logic on the related records. You'll go for after trigger because once inserted, once updated, you get the record ID, right? So based on the record, you're going to do. But here, okay, I'm going to validate the input. It can be existing record or new record user trying to insert. Okay. Anyway, you get more clarity now down the line when we uh, see the things, right? Okay. Right. So a simple syntax of the trigger. Okay, like we have a syntax for writing a class, right? Public class and class name. So we have a syntax for trigger. Okay, trigger doesn't have any access modifier. Okay, trigger doesn't have any access modifier. It will run automatically based on the DML event that DML event that is performed based on user intervention or any tools or external web service through whatever the means the approach. We do the database DML operation. The trigger will fire. It doesn't have any access modifier. Trigger is a keyword. Okay, trigger is a keyword, and then trigger name, on keyword, object name. So okay, trigger is a keyword, the name of the trigger, on keyword, and object name. It means which record, which object, right? You are going to perform the DML operation. Okay, on which object you are going to perform this trigger logic. Okay, so that object name and open and close bracket, you are going to mention here the trigger events. So what is the trigger events I'm talking about? These are the trigger events. Open and close bracket. So this will have a business logic. When I say when I say logic, a body of the a trigger, it means your apex element, right? It is your business logic, right? It can have a declaration. Okay, you need not have a method here because trigger is a place where you just write the logic inside the trigger itself, but you can have a data declaration here. You'll follow this. We're just going to have a logic. That's it. A logic may have all these elements like you have in your Apex class. So this again another class. That's it. is like in another apex category. Okay. Right. So trigger name on keyword, object name, before insert. What does it mean? So any logic you write here inside these braces, okay, this trigger will perform if user is trying to insert any record into the account object. Okay, it means if user if user trying to insert a record, okay, user trying to insert some record and click on save button, what happens? This trigger will fire. You click on a save button before the record goes to the database. Before the record goes to the database, the trigger will fire. This block of code will fire. You will follow this. Okay, suppose this is a UI. Okay, this is a UI we are talking about, and here is my okay, here is my account object. This is my account object. Okay, where I have name, phone, all the fields, right? So this is my account object. Right, this is my account object, and user click on this button. User click on this button. So what will happen? Normally, what will happen actually? The record will be inserted into the database. Okay, but if you have a trigger, okay, I have a trigger. So what happens now? Now this will not execute. Okay, the record will not go to the database directly. Instead, what happens? The trigger will fire first. Then once a trigger execution is done, once a trigger executed, all the logic has been executed, successful completion of the trigger, the record goes to the database. So whatever the record user trying to insert, okay, it will not go to the database directly. If you have a trigger on the object, on which object? Account object, then this logic will run first, then the record goes to the database. You will got it? So that's the use of a trigger. If I have a after insert, what will happen? If I have after insert, the trigger goes to the database first. Once the record is saved, then the trigger will fire. So that's the difference between your before insert, before trigger, and after trigger. People go to this. Right, just to save the time, I'd like to go with the okay, some drafted notes for you guys. Right, so some of the examples, right? So here, before insert, before delete, after delete. So these are the ways you can declare the trigger, right? Account trigger and contact trigger on object. Okay, these are separate trigger. Okay, separate trigger action. right, on custom object. What I'm doing now, a trigger can also have a, will also perform, can also fire for multiple events also. Okay, I can have one event, or else I can have a multiple events also, like this. Okay, so the logic will be performed, this trigger will fire, okay, if any of the operations, any of the database operations is performed on the object record. So these are the syntax of the trigger. Okay, now the question is, okay, suppose I have a requirement, where if industry is okay, apparel, then make the rating field to be cold. Okay, if industry is apparel, then make the rating field to be cold. So what I'm trying to do, when a user trying to insert, when the user trying to insert a record, when the user perform the insert operation, right, when the insert operation is performed on the account object, and I'm going to check whether industry is apparel, whether the industry value is given by the user is apparel. If it is apparel, then I'm going to give the value for the rating field. Okay, what I'm mentioning here, give the value. I'm not going to update. Give the value, right? When you will say update, when the record is goes to the database, right? When the record is goes to the database, then you, how are you going to update the record? You have to use SQL to get the record, okay, to your local variable, and then you update, and okay, and you modify the value, then update it back to the database using database update operation. That's how you'll update the field any from your object. Okay, when you like to update the existing record, first you have to go with SQL, get the record, and change the value. Then using update DML statement or database method, we can update. So these are 3 steps we'll take. But now what I'm going to do now, okay, we are not going to do all these things because record is not into the database yet. Record is not into the database yet. Okay, before the record is inserted, I'm going to check the whether industry value given by the user is apparel. If it is apparel, then give the rating value to be cold. Okay, we are not modifying it. We are going to give that value. That's it. Once the trigger is run, okay, so these are 2 statements we are going to have inside the before trigger. So basically here I'm going to have if, right, account dot industry equal to apparel, then I'm going to modify the rating field equal to cold, give the value. That's it. Once this lines of code is executed, once this logic is executed, then the trigger will run. So sorry, the yeah, that the record goes to the database, then automatically, you know, the record is going to have a TCS limited. So whatever, okay, record we inserted, and rating should be cold. Okay, of course the industry is going to be apparel. So these values will be inserted automatically because we change the value of the rating to be cold here before the record is modified, before the record is inserted. People follow this. You will have to follow this, right? Now the important point here is how to come to know, right? Because record is there not there in the database, but how can I refer the value during runtime? Whatever the value the user is trying to insert, how can I get those values inside my trigger? We know how to get the value if it is there in the database, right? We can go with SQL and get that value and store into local variable. It can be a collection or it can be any single dimensional variable. I can refer the value inside the class or inside the trigger. But now what I need to know the value during runtime. Okay, whatever the value user trying to insert, that value I'm going to refer during runtime. How can I get those value? Okay, how can I get those value which is not there in the database, but the record based on which the DML is performed, the record which is which which is under context, right? What is the record under context here? The context here is nothing but before insert event. The record under context is nothing but TCS Limited, okay, industry. So all these are record under context, the value under context. So how to get the record values under context, the record which is responsible to fire this trigger, okay. So the Salesforce has introduced, okay, has given a variables called trigger runtime context variable, or you can say trigger context variable. Okay, so trigger context variable. So these variables will help you to refer the record under context, the record which is responsible for delete operation, the record which you are trying to insert, the record which has been inserted, okay, based on which the trigger is fired, the record which you are trying to update, right? So all those values you can refer using the trigger context variable. We will follow this. So what are the trigger context variables we have? We have these are the context variable we have. Some of the context variables we have, right? Let me explain this. Right, I just take the first one, trigger.new. What is trigger.new? The trigger.new is a kind of collection. It means, sorry, okay, just listen here. I can store this into list of, okay, a generic object type, yes, object list. So what does it mean? Basically, it's going to return what are the record, on which record user is performing a DML operation. That record will be automatically captured in this variable. The record will be automatically captured in this variable, okay. And what is the value the trigger dot new is going to return? Is going to return the list of S object. We will follow this. This is going to return a list of S object. Why it is a list? Why it is a list? Right? Take an example. I am trying to insert a record and one record manually in my system. But what happens if we insert a bulk volume of account record through data loader, through import wizard, or any third-party system, or any third-party tool? I'm going to insert a bulk volume of data. Okay, in that case, my trigger will need to process not just one record. We have taken an example to explain how the trigger works, right? But what happens in real time? The trigger may fire because of one record or more than one record. Okay, the trigger may fire for one record or more than one record. So this variable, the return type is going to be a list of S object type, the generic object type, right? Okay, I just given a generic object type for a no, to get an understanding. But if I'm going to refer this inside my trigger on account object, okay, if I'm going to refer inside my, if I'm going to refer this trigger.new inside my trigger which is written on account object, then where I can store this? List of account. Trigger.new. People could do this. People could do this, right? So trigger.new is nothing but a list of new versions of a subject record. Why did I say new? Why did I say new version? It's a new record we are trying to insert, right? The new record user trying to insert either through page layout or any tools. Okay, it's a new version which is not there in the database already. It's a new record we are going to insert. So it's basically is going to have whatever the record user trying to insert, whatever the record user trying to update, whatever value user trying to update, whatever the okay record user trying to delete, sorry, insert or or update. Okay, so the new data which is not there in the database already, so that will be automatically captured in this runtime context variable, right? During runtime I can refer this value. Okay, if you listen, if you see our example, okay, before that record is inserted, I need to check. So now this list contains all the values, right? User trying to insert. How many records the ESC list will have now? In this example, only one. If we are inserting some 100 records through data loader, how many records this ACC list will have? It's going to have 100 records. Okay, then how will you check whether the industry is apparel for all these, record in this collection? We know how to do it, right? You can go for each loop. ACC account. So now I can check a dot industry equal to. So what is our objective? When it is apparel, then we are just making the rating field to be cold. Just give some value. That's it. Giving the value before the record is inserted. We are just trying to give a value to the rating field. Okay, right. I need not do the DML now. The DML is not required, right? Because it's a record not there in the database, right? It's not there in the database, and insert operation had already been performed. We are not going to perform any duplicate insert operation here. Okay, the trigger will fire before the record goes to the database. That's it. It's already been initiated, right? The DML operation is initiated. Okay, so we are not going to explicitly give again one more DML here. So that's the logic we are performing in this example. In these scenarios, the DML event is before insert. So how we are going to refer the record under context during runtime? How we are going to get the refer the record? So we are going to use a trigger context variable, okay, which is nothing but trigger.new. We will follow this. Is that clear to all of you? What is trigger?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay, fine. So like that we have trigger.old, okay, which is nothing but a list of old versions of a subject record. The list of old versions of a subject record. It means a record which is there in the database. Okay, the record which is there in the database. On that record, you may perform update operation. You may perform delete operation. In that case, okay, I will have the records which user trying to modify, trying to update. So those records I can refer in my trigger by referring this variable. I can get those values, the old values, right, before the record is modified. Okay, I can get those values here. Once the record is modified, then that's a new version, right? I can refer this variable and get those records. Okay, sometimes you'll go for comparison, compare the old and new value, then do some action. Okay, when the industry finance is modified, So what is the old value? Finance. Okay, when the industry finance is modified and the new value is banking, then do some operation. The old value is finance, the new value is banking. In that case, you need these two variables, right? You can get the old record, the new modified record. Okay, so depends upon the trigger DML event, you will see the values in this collection. Okay, right. And trigger.new map. What is trigger.new map? This is going to be a list, right? This is going to be a map. That's all. Okay, this is going to be a map. So basically, it's going to be like this: map of ID comma. I give some generic as object type. Trigger dot new map. That's it. So it's going to return an ID of the record which is under context and corresponding record as a value. Okay, the ID as a key, corresponding record as a value in the form of map. I can also refer. Okay, you would also need the map also. Most of the time you also need a map so that you can go with the key set, get all the IDs and perform, okay, some sort of logic, right? And also old versions, okay, list of map of, okay, it contains a map of ID as a key and old version of S of the record as a value, right? And what are the other trigger events? Context variables. Trigger is before, trigger is after, trigger is insert, trigger is, okay. These variables, the variables which I am listed here, the variables used to get the context of the trigger. It means what? Whether the trigger is fired because of before event or trigger is fired because of after DML event or trigger is fired because of insert, delete, update event. So those, okay, those you can check by using a Boolean check. Actually, it's a Boolean variable. It's going to return a Boolean. Okay, it's going to return, it's like a static variable in a predefined class called trigger. We'll follow this. For example, I have a class public class trigger. Okay, there is a class called trigger. I have a Boolean static variable. Right? How will you access this variable? Trigger dot before is before. So it's always going to return Boolean. Okay. So just for a clarity, I'm just giving understanding purpose. So when this going to have a, when this going to return true? When the trigger is fired because of before event. For example, in our example, if I check inside the trigger is trigger dot is before, then okay, when user perform a insert operation, then is before will become true. Okay, why when you use these variables? Okay, sometimes you return a trigger on multiple events, right? Right, I have like this. Right, I have a common trigger. I have a common trigger for to perform logic for before, after. Okay, because this trigger will fire whenever the user trying to insert. Okay, I have some logic to perform, and after inserted I have some logic to perform. So every okay, all the logics I am consolidating into one trigger. Okay, that's the best practice actually. Okay, instead of having a multiple triggers on the same object, we combine all the triggers into one trigger, but we need to differentiate we need to differentiate the control, right? Else what happens if I have all the logic inside for both after and insert? For every DML before after, the same logic will perform, right? But we need to differentiate. In order to differentiate, we'll use this context variable. Okay. So when the trigger is fired because of before insert, only this part of the logic will run. Okay. If it is after insert, only this part of the logic will run because we have used a context variable here, a Boolean type. This turn to true for before. This turns to true for after. People go to this. Okay. Similarly, we use insert, update, delete, and all, right? Suppose I have a before insert, before delete my trigger, then how will you differentiate? Okay. If it is a before insert, and then if it is a before insert, then do this. If it is a before delete, then do this. Okay. In that case, we'll use this context variable. People understand this? All of you? Then we have a trigger dot size to get the total number of records under processing, right? So trigger dot size, for example, trigger dot size here, how many value numbers I get? Only one. If this trigger is fired because of any database data loader event, data loader operation, then whatever number of records you are trying to insert or update, I can get in this method. That's it. Follow this. That's what you are going to get, right? Okay, right. We'll move on to a simple writing a trigger for the same scenario. We'll see how it works. So okay, I go to the developer console. Okay, I go to file trigger. So give the name of the trigger. Select the object, submit. So it gives some template, okay? It gives some template for you. Trigger keyword, name, on keyword, object name, events. Of course, you can give multiple events with the comma separated here, okay? Right. So our logic is going to be performed on before, okay, before the record is saved, right? So I like to, yeah. So trigger dot new is a is a list of a new version of a subject record. Okay, it's a list of new version of a subject record. So what is the object under context here? Account. So I can store here. So why I'm going for looping? Because the trigger has to perform the record which is inserted through page load, maybe one record, or trigger should also be handled more than one record also. So reason we go for a list and for each loop. Okay. In case, see, if there is no tools, okay, there is no tools actually. For example, I have there is only one approach. We have only one record at a time we can insert. Then how can I do this? Trigger dot new. So this is a collection, right? 0, which is going to return just one record. That's it. Okay. Then I can check whether if a is a dot industry equal to like that, I can check. But trigger will not process any of the records. In case if you're trying to insert bulk volume, this trigger will not process. So trigger should be able to process more than one record at a time. So okay, you need to process like a collection. So your trigger is done actually. Okay, if you insert one record, so just one iteration will go. If you bulk volume of data, then those many looping will go. Okay, fine. People good to this, right? So when this trigger will fire, we did not give the DML here, okay, because the DML has been initiated, right? So when this trigger will fire, when we insert the record, okay, see here, I'm not giving any value here. I'm just okay trying to insert a record. Insert. I'm not giving any value for the rating field. I save. Okay, the rating become cold. Okay, so it's basically we've overridden the page, right? For extension demo, we've overridden the page, so it appears here, right? So what happens? The rating become cold now. Okay, so let's remove that the overriding changes. Okay, so that view no override. Good all of you. Count no override. Right. So whatever the record we inserted, the rating becomes cold now. So what happens basically? Before the record goes to database, it the trigger ran and just give that value the field. Okay, value the field based on a condition. So it means what? This is the simplest business logic, right? But it's any logic you can write, like your class. So it's a place where you can write your Apex code. Okay, like whatever you writing in your uh, class. Okay, even I can call another class from the trigger. I can call another class from the trigger. Okay, that type of the scenario you are going to see down the line. Okay, I can also call another class as well from the trigger. A common set of logic I can move it in a class. That class can also be called from the trigger. Okay, we'll follow this. So let's take a quick scenario. So this cannot be done. This cannot be done with any of the framework. Okay, any of the framework like your workflows, process, approval process, and all, right? So all these will fire on after insert and after update only. But what we did now using trigger, before the DML is performed, we are able to do this. Okay, perform some logic. Okay, before contact is inserted, check if, okay, mailing city is Hyderabad, then give, okay, then give the value for, just an example to understand how the trigger works. Okay, if you have a clarity on uh, the trigger framework, then of course you can do this on your own. Okay, okay, if the mailing city is Hyderabad, then I'm going to make the level field as primary. Okay, just an importance, okay, just an importance of the contact. Okay, the level field is just say now what is a contact? It's a primary contact or secondary something. There is a custom field. There is a custom field. I'm going to give a value primary, right? So what do you do? Trigger. So it is on contact object. So what is the event? Before event. Before it is inserted. Okay. And now this time the trigger.new is going to be, what is the object under context? The contact object. Am I right now? Like this. We will do this. Right? To save the time, just I go with a predefined example. Right. So what is the requirement here? Before the operation is inserted, check if the stage is not closed. If the stage is not closed, then make the close date as 30 days from today. It means, right, when you try to insert the current date, from the current date, 30 days is going to be the close date. The opportunity needs to be closed in next 30 days. If it is an open opportunity, sometimes you close the opportunity when you create it, right? So in that case, no, I'm not going to perform any logic, but because that close date is going to be a current date. But when the opportunity is not closed, it's an open opportunity, then I like to make the close date as today. So what you'll do, you'll write a trigger on opportunity object before insert. You're going to check whether if stage is not equal to closed one or closed last, right? So what is the condition you'll use here? The if condition. Stage main is not equal to closed last, and it should also should not be equal to close to 1. Am I right? We'll go for okay. So when the stage is not equal to closed last and closed 1, it means it's going to be considered as an open opportunity. And then make the close date as current date from 30 days from current date. Okay, here you can see we are storing the triggered at new into a collection, then do this, right? Can I directly refer like this? I can say one statement. I can also do like this, right? I command this. You can do like this. It's not right here. Okay. Opportunities. So what I did now, so it's an open opportunity. Okay, I just given some random date, but the date should be 30 days from today. Am I right? The date should be 30 days from today. Okay, and it's not or, right? Because if you go with or, then one of the condition always, okay, it will work for either one of these only. Okay, I need to work for the both. When the stage is close to 1, close last also. Okay. Yes, it is right only, right? Close to last, when you go with close to 1, yes, I think it's going to be and only. Anyway, the objective is this one. Maybe you try the iteration and see what happens. Okay, right? We got the objective, all of you, right? So how that? What's my objective? Right. We'll go for the next trigger. We'll go for next trigger. A type after insert. After insert we end, we are going to see. Okay. So what is a requirement now? We are not going to, now we are going to perform on the record which is inserted into the database. After an account is inserted, okay, where the industry is finance and annual revenue is more than a million value, then we are going to create an high priority case. We are going to create the high priority case, right? When the account is inserted with the industry finance and annual revenue, we are going to create an high priority case. The case needs to be created for this account. Okay, the case needs to be created for this account. So how will you create a case record for a parent account? We have a account ID as well. Am I right? Account ID is a field, relationship field in your case object. So here I have to pass ID of the account record. Whatever the account record I inserted. Okay, so I need an ID. So I'm performing a operation on related object. So I go for after insert event, after the record is inserted. Okay, check the value of the record you inserted. Check the value of the record you inserted, record under the context, by referring trigger.new, because trigger.new is a new version of record, right? A new versions, it means the record which is inserted. Okay, so using trigger.new, I refer the value of the account, finance and annual revenue, everything. Then I create a case record. Okay, listen. Suppose I insert a 10 account. Okay, with industry finance and value. Okay, more than 2 million, more than 1 million I inserted. So how many cases I need to insert? I need to insert 10 cases. Okay, I need to insert the 10 cases here, right? So what you will do now, you may perform a logic like this: trigger, trigger, so what is the event? After insert, okay, let's go to the developer console. Okay, so where you'll get the account records, it's under trigger.new. Okay, so now I'm going to check. Sorry. We will go to this. So for every, okay, an account whose industry is finance and annual revenue is more than a million. Okay, more than a million. Then I'm going to create the case record. So what is the requirement I have? Create the case record with the name subject as case for the name of the account. Okay, case for the name of the account. So I need to create a case record. So how will you insert a case record? Sorry. Missing something here. Yeah, case C equal to new case right. Right, let's have a 5 minutes quick break. Just try to insert a case record and complete this logic. I believe you can do this. I send it in chat window. Just continue this. Just 5 minutes break. And all of you.
This conference will now be recorded.
So what is the subject? The subject should be in the name of okay, case for plus a dot new. Okay, and new case, right? What are the other mandatory field? Origin, account ID equal to a dot id, right? Right. What are the next step? What do you do? What do you do? We have to insert the case, right? See, if you keep the DML inside the for loop, okay, which is not recommended, right? The reason, in one transaction, in one set of operation, maximum only 150 DML can only be run. 150 DML. It can be insert, update, delete any DML. In old transaction, I can only perform 150 DML. If there are more than 150 account meet this criteria, industry finance more than 1 million, then you will hit a limit here. You will easily hit the maximum limit allowed. Then the trigger will fail. The trigger will fail. Okay. To avoid, we can go for a DML, perform the DML based on a collection. Am I right? Okay. So this list of case, basically we are create to add this collection. That's it. Okay. Once all the elements are added to the collection, then outside the for loop, you perform this insert DML. So now I'm going to insert case list in one statement, right? I can insert bulk volume of cases. Okay. What happens if none of the record in the trigger that firing the trigger, none of the record that fires the trigger meet this criteria? Then this collection will be, this statement will fail, right? Because it's a null list. So to avoid this, we are going to have a if condition here. If only if size is greater than 0, then perform, then insert the case. That's it. We'll follow with this. Make sense to all of you? Okay, so just testing this logic. I'm trying to insert a K account. Okay, I'm trying to insert an account with industry finance. Okay, it's industry finance and revenue more than a million. I save this. So what is the expected? The case should be created with this name. We'll follow this, and case is created for the account. Okay, the case is created for this account only. That's the reason we are able to see under the related list, right? We'll go to this.
Yes, sir. Clear.
Okay, I request you to do this exercise. I suggest you to do this exercise. The exercise is scenario 5. It's a kind of exercise you have to do. Okay. Okay. So again, in the after insert event, we have one more. So what is this actually? When account is created with this condition, okay, annual revenue more than 5K and 5,000, and the customer is direct customer, then you are going to create an opportunity as well as the task. So both are going to be created for this account, right? Based on ID of the account. Okay, so I hope you can create this. when you create a task, the important field here is what ID. How will you create a task for the account? So the task will appear as a related list here. When you create a task for an account, the task will appear here, right? When you click new task manually, related to field, okay, it's going to be account. So what is a related to field? It's a label, right? So what is a field name? What ID. What ID is a field, okay? Task for which company? Okay, the standard object or custom objects are applicable here. So ID of the account record you are going to pass here. Okay, and activity days is nothing but your due date. The name of the field name is basically activity date. Assigned to is nothing but the owner, the user object. Okay, user from the user record. So basically, the owner of the account you are going to move to the assigned to field. I hope you are able to do this. So you are going to insert two types of record in this trigger. One is opportunity, another is a task. We will go to this. I request you to do this example. Tomorrow I will give the I'll show you the solutions for you. Okay, right. Okay, so there is the best practice. What you are going to see now. The best practice I'm going to explain now. When you see the triggers in real time, the trigger, okay, you will not see more than multiple triggers on the same object. You'll see one trigger. You'll see one trigger which will perform, okay, which will perform a logic for different types of DML event. But now I have a true trigger on the account object, a before insert, after insert. In case I have scenarios on the same object, before delete, after update, right? Before update, after undelete. I have different, a logic needs to be performed, business logic, for different DML event on the same object. Okay, then there will be a number of triggers I need to have on the same object, right? Multiple triggers on the same object. Okay, which will create, you know, which will create a scenarios where you will difficult to manage the trigger. It will difficult to track. Okay, what is a trigger? Which trigger fires this update? Okay, what is the order? And any changes required, no, any change in requirement, then you will difficult to, okay, it's very difficult to manage and modify the trigger if you have multiple triggers on the same object. Okay, like your workflows and process, right? Your workflows have more than one workflows on the same object, then you will lose the connectivity, and you're able to, difficult to manage the workflows. So your process builder is able to track replace all the multiple workflows with one process. So I have a if else kind of condition in the process, right? So here in the trigger part, I'm going to consolidate all the trigger into one, right? I have two trigger here. So I'm going to consolidate. See here, I'm going to create one common trigger. Okay, I name it as um, okay, account trigger, right? So two event I'm going to handle, before insert, after insert. So all this logic, okay, so this logic is for before insert, and this logic is for after insert. Right, there are two logics here, but this trigger will fire for both the event, before insert, after insert. The trigger will fire for both the event, right? The trigger will fire on both the event. How to avoid this? No, to fire only on okay, this logic needs to be fired only for the before insert, this logic only for the after insert. Okay, so we have seen a context variable to differentiate, to identify the context of the trigger, right? Is insert. Makes sense to all of you? Okay, right. Is before I can go. In this case, I can go for is before. So this will turn to true if the trigger fired because of before insert event. Similarly, I'm going to perform this logic in is after. Okay, in the after event only, I'm going to perform this whole logic. This makes sense to all of you? We'll follow this. We're able to consolidate the two trigger into one. Okay, we'll follow this. Still, we
Yes,
are
sir.
going to make this more optimized way of maintaining the trigger. How we are going to do this? We are going to move all this logic, business logic, into a class, a common class. Okay, a common class which is going to handle the logic for the trigger. So okay, so I follow this naming convention. I name it as, okay, which is going to handle the trigger part, business logic for the trigger. It's a class, it's not your trigger. Okay, we are just trying to create a class, and name of the class, okay, I give the name, no, the reason it's going to handle the logic of the trigger. So here I'm going to have a method. Either you can go for a static method or a non-static method also. Okay, right. So here uh, before insert. Okay, so according to your what logic you're going to perform, that's it. Value rating field. So that's what I'm going to perform here. Value the rating field, right? So this logic I'm going to move here, right? So this is a class, right? The class doesn't know about the trigger.new context variable. Okay, the trigger.new context will only work inside the trigger, not in your class. But I'm going to call this method from the trigger. Okay, how you are going to call the method? I'm going to call, is a static method, so the static call a class name dot method name. That's how you're going to call. When you call this trigger, I am going to pass this trigger.new, because the class doesn't have the a scope to refer this trigger.new directly, right? So when you call this, I'm going to pass here. So we are going to receive this in your class. I'm going to receive like this. People good with this? Everyone is good with this? So from the trigger, I'm just going to have a call statement. Okay, from the trigger, I'm going to have the call statement. Okay, when you call the class, you're going to pass the record, the context variable. So now is a class which is going to handle the logic, right? So now the trigger has just only a call statement. Okay, so we have a respective method which takes care of that logic, right? Similarly, I'm going to include a method. Okay, remember, I can go with static or non-static, it's your choice. When you go for static, I save some lines of code, okay, creating the instance for the class. That's it. So here create case for account. So that's the kind of logic I'm going to perform here. So the whole logic I'm going to move here. So again, what I need in this method, I need a trigger.new only. right? So I don't need this. So there is another method, create case for ACC. So from the trigger I'm going to call, okay, so account trigger handler dot, so what I'm going to pass, trigger dot name, right? So what you will find it in real time, all of you will find a trigger in this format, okay? You will see only the call statement and the call statement will make it from another class, okay? We just use the one class here. Sometimes you'll have different classes which will takes care of uh, the trigger logic, okay, which would be named as handler or any other naming convention, depends upon your project standard. They'll follow the naming convention, mostly will follow. You'll see like handler, okay, trigger handler or insurance trigger handler, a banking trigger handler, depends upon the module name or depends upon your project, okay? So the important point here is you will have a call statement, you will have a common class which takes care of performing the having the logic for your trigger. You will follow this. So I have just one trigger. I can write any changes required. I have enough documentation here, okay, updating the rating field or calculating the taxes or something. I just have these comments here, so I can just maintenance, right? Doing the changes, testing, everything would be comparatively. If you have multiple triggers on the same object, I have one trigger to analyze, one trigger to debug. We will follow this. So this is the way you follow the best practice. So best practice of the trigger. What we have seen now is a best practice of trigger. Trigger should be able to process more than one record at a time. Am I right? One record. It means trigger should be bulkified. What does it mean? Do not keep a DML inside the for loop, okay, and process everything as a collection. Do not keep DML or SOQL inside the for loop. Write the trigger logic inside a handler class. Am I right? Keep one trigger for an object and perform the trigger logic inside a handler class. Okay. Use trigger context variables to perform the way. Do like this. Okay, so these are some of the best practice of your trigger. Everyone is good with this?
Yes, sir. Clear.
Okay. So combine all the triggers into one. That is more important. Right. If you see here, there is a trigger. Okay. Do not allow user to delete. Okay. Do not allow user to delete a contact if the contact belongs to an account. Right. If the contact is existing contact is under any parent, any account, then I should not allow user to delete the contact. So in this case, right? In this case, what is more important thing? How will you throw an error message? Okay. How will you throw the error message, right? So if user is trying to delete a contact that belongs to an account, okay, that belongs to an account, so it belongs to an account, then I should throw an error message here. The error message will be displayed here, and if it is we are trying to delete using page layout, if we are trying to delete using data loader, for example, I'm trying to delete 1,000 accounts contacts, so among some 100 contacts as some account, then those 100 contacts must be rejected in the data loader, and whatever the error message I'm displaying in the page layout, that should be captured in the error file in the data loader, right? That's how the data loader will process. It's a kind of non-atomic operation, right? Whatever the record got rejected because of any issue, that will be captured in the error file with the message, the same message what we going to throw in the page layout, that should be captured there. Okay, how we are going to capture the error message? See here, there is a method called add error. There is a method called add error. So that method, okay, I can use within your trigger. This method is not applicable for any other any other non-trigger context. We cannot use this add error method. Only within the trigger context, only within the trigger framework, I can use this add error method. So whatever message you are giving here, that will be displayed in the UI, and that message will be captured in your error file in the data loader. So that's the error message basically. Okay, right. Now, how we are going to identify whether the contact, okay, what user trying to delete as any account. Okay, how will you check when the account is, when the child has any parent? We know the relationship query, right? Select id from contact. Okay, this is how you'll check. I need all the contact that has a parent. You can do like this. So all these contacts, there are 33 contacts with belongs to some account. So account name also you put. Am I right? When I say equal to null, okay, when I say equal to null, so whatever contacts I have, okay, without a parent, so only those are returned. So account ID is a field I'm going to use in the where condition. Okay, right. For which contact we are going to check? I'm going to check for the contact what user is trying to delete. What user is trying to delete? Only those contacts I need to check. Okay, right. What is the object you will write the trigger? Contact. And important thing is, what is the event you are going to perform this logic? before user is trying to delete, right? The event is going to be before event. Object is going to be contact, and event is going to be before delete. Right? Before deleted, I need to perform the logic. Okay, right. And now the important thing here is context variable. So what is the context variable you are going to use? Trigger.new or trigger.old? Trigger.new I cannot use, right? Because new is the new versions of record. It means the record is not there in the database. The value is not there in the database, right? So whatever the value you are trying to give new, it's considered as a new version. Okay. Whatever the record is there in the database, on that record you perform the logic. So that's going to be a old versions of S object. People remember? How do you define your trigger.old? A list of old version. It means existing record. On which record you are going to perform the DML? The new record. What you are going to insert? New version, old version. Okay. So on which record you are going to perform the delete operation? Existing record, right? So old map, old, or so what? Which trigger context variable will have value in this event? Trigger.old, trigger.old map. Okay. We'll follow this. So my trigger is going to be like this. Trigger contact trigger on contact object. Before delete. Just 5 more minutes will complete. People are okay with this? People are good with this? Okay, I'm trying to delete it. So I can have value when I check this. That's how I get the size, right? If you get the size, this will have some value. If you get the size of old map, you'll have some value. But what about if I get a, I'm trying to refer trigger.new here. The trigger.new will not have value. It's null. It's going to be null because it's a new version. But when this trigger will fire, the trigger will fire on the existing record. Which record you're trying to delete? Only the record which is there in the database, right? So trigger.old or trigger.new map we are going to use in this trigger, right? So now I'm going to check whether the contact has any account. Then I'm going to perform this logic. I'm going to perform this logic not for every contact, only for the contact which is there in this trigger. So I can also do like this, in trigger.old. So automatically this query will fire only for the contact what user is trying to delete. If you are trying to delete in the UI, it's going to have only one record. If you are trying to delete in the data loader, okay, and it's going to have all the records that you are trying to delete in a file, CSV file, right? Right. What next we are doing here? See here. So this is basically we used in a, okay, I can go with old map key set and get all the IDs and pass the ID here, okay, and get the map, right? And the next thing, we need to throw the error message, right? Only for the contact which has the account ID. So for every record I need to check. Okay, we got all the records here, but we need to throw the error message for individual record. Am I right? Not for all the record I'm going to throw one message. Okay, I got all the records here, but I'm going to throw error message for individual record. So what we are doing here, okay, so we got the old map. So what is the old map basically? Trigger.old map. Trigger.old map is a key as ID and value as a record. Key as ID and value as a record. If you pass the key, okay, if the keys exist, it means what? It means what? The contact is there in this map. What contact? Whatever the contact we got it. Whatever the contact that has a parent. Okay. So get the key set, move to the ID, set of ID, and iterate that id and check whether that id is there in the map or not. If it is there, then go with add error. That's it, whatever error we have. Okay, anyway, let's I just given the overview. Let's give a detailed a demo in the next session for this. We'll follow this. So for now, I just move these notes into the uh, drive for your reference. I mean, a chatter for your reference. Okay, right. See you all tomorrow. Take care.